Welcome to the Awareness to Obtain podcast, where we help mature men get through life's issues and start living the life that they truly want to live. I am your host, Chris Baus, professional life coach and motivational speaker, and we will always have a topic that is very vulnerable and very true to what men deal with on a daily basis. I hope you get a ton of value out of everything you hear, and here we go. All right, welcome to today's episode. I am very excited today because I have a special guest. She is a personal friend and also a professional life coach, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Diana Boskma. I'm a life coach, mother of four, live in the UK, but I'm Dutch, so I like to confuse people a bit with that one. And I love being here. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you definitely for doing this. Like I said, Diana is a very close personal friend. We talk on a weekly basis, and she's been very instrumental in helping me get my crap together. So I thought it would be great to have her on and kind of share her perspective on the topic that I picked today, which is the power of fear. And for me, it's a very broad topic, but it's also very close and personal to my heart because for a long time, I lived my life based on fear, and it crippled me and it prevented me from doing a lot of things that I wanted to do in life. And also, it made me become a people pleaser. And the fear of not fitting in, the fear of not being worthy, the fear of, imposter syndrome, all those types of things made it to a point where I literally lived my life based on how everybody else thought of me. And it took me until I was 42 years old to literally realize that that wasn't the way that I should be living and that wasn't the proper way to live. And then after that, it took huge steps and a lot of time to break those habits and learn to live a different way. So I wanted to get Diana's perspective on what she thinks about fear and, how she goes about preventing it from controlling her life.
So, to start off with, most of my life I've lived the way that I would either do something out of fear or don't do something out of fear, because fear was running my life. So I can relate to what you just said, and it took me a long time, decades, to get out of that. These days, it's a thing of, does it feel uncomfortable? Okay, let's try it. Let's see how that goes, because in the past, it would be the moment the discomfort would come, that would be fear. And there would also be this thing of, is someone going to be unhappy with it? Well, probably. These days it's this thing of, okay, I'll do it anyway because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be able to make everybody happy. But in the past, I really tried to do that. So it's always this thing of, does it resonate with me? Do I want to do it? And to step away from that fear, because that's the biggest thing for me, is to keep stepping away from the fear. The moment I start feeling that, figure out why, because sometimes there's a reason to be fearful, because sometimes it's just not a good idea, but most of the time it just doesn't really help the fear. So most of the time it's useless, but there are sometimes valid reasons to not do something, and then the fear is reasonable. But for the most part in my life, it's not been useful or reasonable. So
Yeah, I really like the way you put that, and I totally agree 100%. I mean, I have learned, obviously, I'm a slow learner, but at 54 years old, I've finally learned that if something feels really uncomfortable and forced, it's probably not the right thing to do,
yeah.
Right? But that being said, especially when I was younger, and I'm going to stereotype a little bit, I think a lot, especially for men, is based on pride and ego. When we have those healthy fears, we are so ashamed of, allowing those fears to take place in our life because programming and childhood upbringing and all those things have taught us that if you cry, if you show emotion, if you do any of those things, you're weak. Yeah. So the last thing we want to do is show weakness, and that literally bleeds into, especially in young adult life, it creates this, I guess, conundrum would be the right word, right? Where we're literally scared of our own shadow, but we are so afraid to admit it that we just stumble through life making all these mistakes because we won't talk to anyone. We won't get a perspective. And even if someone tries to give us advice or gives us a perspective, our pride is so high, and we think we know everything, and we won't listen to anybody anyway.
Yeah. I actually think that their coaching can be useful, because with coaching, you're not going to tell someone what to do. So then you can help them think through, as in what's the right journey for them. Because that's one of the things that's helped me. Because for me, it was the fear of failure, but also the fear of success that stopped me with a lot of things. And then having someone to talk with, and especially someone who wasn't close to me, because I found that really scary. I didn't really want to go down that route of my kids know that I'm struggling, I'm not a good example, all that. Or in the past, my partner, didn't want to talk to him, because it was just this thing of, well, what will he think? Will he think that I can do this? If he thinks I can't do it, well, should I not do it then? And all that kind of stuff. There were so many thoughts around it. But the moment I started with talking with someone who wouldn't tell me what to do, because that's one of the things that nobody really likes. And I found, especially with a partner, they frequently tell you, well, why don't you just do this? Because one of the things that guys do a lot is give you the solution right away. And that can be useful, because the solution can be a very good one, especially when something's broken. But when it's about emotions and thoughts, that can be more tricky. So I found that then talking with someone where I could be open to talk about what was bothering me, and without any judgment, because that judgment is what's so hard. And I think that's for men the same as for women. The moment you feel that someone might judge you for being fearful, you're not going to talk. And then working through that, yeah, it was for me really useful to get to the other end of it, because it was terrifying at times to be so scared of doing something or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point, and I know personally in my own life I struggle with that the most. Obviously being married for a long time, um, the person that I'm most intimate with and the person that I trust the most, I was still very fearful of the judgment. And let's face reality, right? Marriage, any of those things, they're not completely unconditional, right? And there's going to be some judgment. So it is key, and I didn't realize it until late in life, to have that person that you can literally say anything to without judgment is so instrumental. And just the vulnerability that it takes to talk about some of the topics that we need to get off of our
Mm-hmm.
chest.
Yeah.
And it was so instrumental in, for one, my sobriety, and for two, my personal development, to have that person that, for one, didn't always tell me that I was wrong and tell me what to do. They also let me know that it was okay to feel the way that I was feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And then once I figured out that it was okay to feel that way, then you can start building the staircase and taking action steps on how to feel a different way.
Yeah.
But until somebody actually accepts that it's okay that you're where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with you, then
Yeah.
you're actually at a point to where you can start to take steps and get rid of those fears that, let's face it, most everybody's problems in life are fear based
Mm-hmm.
at, some level.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is you're dealing with, there's fear involved with it, right?
Yeah.
And the only way that I've learned and that coaching has taught me is to, one, talk about the problem,
Mm-hmm.
accept that you're at where you're at, because acceptance is huge.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, as a life coach, I don't tell people how to fix their problems. I help them realize that they already know the answer.
Yeah. They do.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's about helping them realize and get rid of all the clutter and all the clouds and all the dust, and realize that they already know exactly what they need to do to become a better
Yes.
person. I just have to be there for them and help them discover new options, new opportunities, and new ways of living life.
Yeah. Yeah. The more I understand what someone's trying to tell me, the more they also understand what's going on in their mind. Because when you start explaining to someone what goes on with you, then you start to get that clarity in your own mind of how do I solve this? Because
Mhm.
that's what's so needed, that you really get your own thoughts clear. And the best way to do it is talk it out with someone. And that I one of the things that I talk about with my kids and also my grandkid these days is that all emotions, all feelings, they're valid. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do you deal with them? So,
Mhm.
one of the words courage, it's not that you don't have fear, it's that you do it despite the fear. And the fear, it's a signal usually. but is it a good signal or a bad signal? And that's when you start looking into that. What is it telling me? And analyze it a bit, get the awareness and the analysis instead of just the fear. And I'm paralyzed, I won't do anything anymore. That's not going to help. So thinking about it, why did I get scared? What's the reason behind this? Because that can be a big thing for me. There's some of my childhood things that have caused these fears. That doesn't mean that's valid, because in my case it really isn't. It's just about people being unhappy with me, and as a kid that was scary. Now people being unhappy with me doesn't really matter. I'm a big girl these days, so I can handle that. But that fear is still a little bit there. Recognizing that and then moving forward with that, like you said about these steps earlier, then you can do so many more things despite there being a bit of fear. And that fear, it's okay. It's going to keep you a little bit on edge as well. So it's not not the worst of things.
Yeah, you nailed it right on the head. The thing for me is at an early age, I never felt like I fit in,
Mm.
right? And the fear of not being accepted by my peers and other kids my age was a very big precursor in how my addiction started in the first place, because I'm a big believer in, alcohol and drugs weren't my problem, they were my solution.
It's self-medicating.
Yeah, and I hated the way I felt. And the only way that I knew how to get rid of those feelings was to not feel anything. Right. So you self medicate to the point where you're numb and you feel nothing.
Yep.
And luckily I eventually learned that that's not the way to handle it. The way to handle it is to come up with a constructive coping mechanism to deal with those emotions. But because of the early age, I never learned how to cope with any type of emotion. I had no clue what the positive coping mechanisms were.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So it's like a 40-year-old that has to learn all these new tricks. And it's very difficult to teach an old dog new tricks, right? But it's not impossible. It just takes willingness to realize that there's something different. And if I literally make myself vulnerable enough and open myself up enough, then I can start to see, these steps that I need to take. And coaching was huge for that, because I had no clue. And I had no clue that I even had all these things wrong with me. I had literally convinced myself that because I was successful financially and was married and those types of things, that it wasn't really that bad.
Mm.
Even though inside I was scared of my own shadow, and all I felt like doing was dying.
Yeah.
Yep. And there are so many men that feel that way, right? They might have a successful business, they might have this, they might have that, they have children, their children are doing good. We base our personal feelings about ourselves based on what we have created in our life, right? Instead of how we feel, when literally we should do things the exact opposite. If we feel good inside, then the rest of our life will be good.
Yep.
It literally took me 42 years of my life to figure that out. And there's guys that are probably older than that now that still haven't figured it out. And it's just because nobody has shown them the way, or they haven't been vulnerable enough to reach out for help, to be shown the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing is, what you said about childhood, it frequently starts with that. I wasn't taught how to manage my emotions, how to regulate them. I had no clue. Had to learn that much later in life. And I think a lot of people grow up that way, that they have no idea how to regulate things. But also, when you get told the same thing over and over, you start to internalize it. And I found that several of the things that my mum used to say a lot, because she was a very fearful woman, that rubbed off on me. So that got stuck inside me as well. Was that my truth? Not really when I started to deep down look into myself, but it was what was my normal. So I was used to that. And that was what I was dragging along in life, because we all have a ton of luggage to drag along. And over time, getting more and more clear about these things, and step by step unraveling it all, and also learning emotional regulation. So one of my big things was that when I would get stuck in a low mood, I didn't know how to get out of it. Over time, I learned some techniques to do that, and I can use that with fear. Because fear gets me into a low mood. So for me, anything like anger, fear, and everything, I get into that low mood, and then I kind of get stuck into non-functioning. and regulating myself out of that, that's been the key to actually get into a much better place. And then I get into a happier place, and from the happier place I can be more successful. So for me it was definitely being in the happy place which created the success, because from a really unhappy, fearful place, I could probably create it, but not in the way I wanted to. So I'd rather do it from a good place than the stressful, difficult one, like many people do. Because I've read stories of people who did that, terrified, still created good money. Hard life.
Yeah, I think, and you're so right. Like, regardless of how different we try to be, um, our parental influence has so much bearing on who
Yeah.
we become, right?
Yep.
Um, I have tried for years and years and years to not be my father because he was the alcoholic, based everything on how much money he had and, how many toys and how many material things. And as much as I tried to not be him, I became exactly like that,
Yeah.
and even with my children, and raising them, I wanted to be so different, but I still became the workaholic guy that only gave them presents and tried to show them I loved them by buying them stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and, uh, and it's very hard to break out of that mold because you're right. Like for 18 years of your life, that's what you're subjected to.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, it's all you know. And then you get out in the real world and you try to be different, but it's so scary and so fearful that you're always going to fall back on what you know, what is comfortable. So every time I would put myself in a situation where I didn't know the answer or I didn't know how to approach a certain situation, I fell back on the old me
Mm-hmm.
because of what was comfortable. It was that warm blanket, you
Yep.
know, and, uh, and there are plenty of people, and I know some personally that are very successful on the outside and on, the inside, they are completely tormented and they live their entire life that way
Yeah.
because they simply just don't know any other way.
That's the thing. You don't know any different way how you're going to change something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power of conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing that there's another way. And then whoever listens, they can hopefully make some changes for themselves. Because it's just really tough to keep being in that uncomfortable comfort zone, because most people, when they're in that place, they're not really comfortable. It's just that's what they know. So that's what kind of is that warm blanket. But in the end, when you start to really think about it, you're not that comfortable, because there's the constant torment, the constant suffering. Nobody really wants to be in that place. So no matter how normal it is, there's still the feeling of, can it not be different? I hear it a lot where people have this, I wish life was different. And I think, well, it can be different, but you'll have to look at things and see where you can make the change so that you can make it easier or better, or, in another way, create a better comfort zone where life is
Mm-hmm.
just nicer.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And I think also, there's that thing where we are so afraid of letting someone else know how we feel and exactly what's going on with us. It stops us from getting help even when it's staring us right in the face. Now that I've gone through the personal development and I've allowed other people in my life to help me and mentor me, I realized that, there were certain periods throughout my life where there were people there actually begging me
Mm-hmm.
to let them help me.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see it because I was so afraid to let anybody know that there was anything wrong. Even back in my music career, which I haven't shared publicly on these podcasts, but you are very familiar with, we had a manager
Yeah.
who could literally completely see all of us falling apart
Yeah.
and tried numerous times to, just talk to us and give us a way out. And we didn't want to listen. We thought we were on the top of the world. We
Mm-hmm.
thought we were all going to be rock stars. And, I think about now, if I just would have listened to that man and he wasn't trying to do anything else but help me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just would have maybe listened to him a little bit, how different my life would have turned out from that
Yeah.
point forward.
Yeah.
But I also am a true believer that until you get to a certain point of desperation and just completely being sick of it, you're not going to accept the help, right? So as bad as it was and as many mistakes as I made and as many traumas as I went through, the reality is that it took all that
Mm-hmm.
to get me to the point to where I was like, enough's enough. I can't do this anymore. I have to find something else. And, I think that's my singular goal with this podcast, is to just let people know that the way they feel is not unique. It's not unfamiliar. There are millions of people that deal with the same issues that I dealt with and you dealt with throughout our entire lives, right? The difference is that we finally realized that in order to find a way out, we had to reach out for help.
Yep. Yeah, I was quite fed up. And what you mentioned about the manager, I actually had someone in my life as well, a really good friend of mine. He tried many times. I wasn't ready. I wasn't listening. I thought I was doing the right thing while I was literally on the wrong path. But I didn't realize it at the time. And turned out all right, all of it in the end. That's not it. But if I would have been ready to listen to him and to accept his help, things could have been very different. But then again, now I have the family I've got the kids I've got, so I do love them. So it's, in the end, it's all good. I can't change the past. I can only be where I am right now and make the most of now towards the future. So it's all good. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And that's why I love having these conversations with you, on our regular weekly basis, just because, we've been through a lot of similar situations, and I relate to, your past experiences so much. And, I get emotional, which is crazy for me because, I was totally the guy that, was raised men don't cry, and, it shows weakness and all that stuff. And now I freaking cry at commercials, and, and it's a totally different side of me, but it's okay. I'm fine with putting that on my podcast now, right? That's the thing is I realize that the only way that I can help people is for them to truly know who I am, right? And first off, I don't care what they think, right?
That's
Like
it.
literally, that was a huge step. And overcoming my fears was to stop the people pleasing.
Mm-hmm. That's
You
the
know,
biggest.
I am who I am. I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as I am cool with that, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what some guy watching this thinks. It doesn't matter what somebody that works with me thinks. It doesn't. A huge part for me was not caring so much about what my wife thinks.
That's a big change.
But all that was necessary for me to realize it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to try to be doing the right thing and sometimes not knowing what the right thing is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like there are days when I wake up and everything's just upside down and I don't know how to fix it. And I'm a freaking life coach. And all of my friends are like, oh, well, Chris has got all the answers. No, I don't have all the answers, right? What I do have is some action steps that I can take to get me out of those episodes where I feel unworthy or insecure and get myself back on a track to where I can find the answers.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah.
That is the biggest thing that I found in overcoming fear. Is for one, accepting the fact that it's okay to be afraid.
Yep.
And then have a certain routine that I can always fall back on to overcome those fears.
Something just came to mind for me. One of my friends was in the military for a while, and he always says that fear is very useful because without fear, you wouldn't survive, especially in a war situation.
Yeah.
Fear is so useful, but also don't fully listen to it because you still have to do your job. So there's this balance between fear and courage. Be careful, but still do it. And that was really interesting to talk with him about it because he's been deployed a couple of times and came out of pretty bad places. But a soldier without fear is a dead soldier was his thing. And that does make sense.
Yeah, and it does, and you're right. And now fear is a huge motivator for me,
Yep.
right?
Same.
Like instead of it being crippling, it helps me check myself. It helps me build the courage to overcome it. And like this right here, I have never liked the way I look in the mirror. So the thought of me, doing this podcast and sending it out on multiple platforms and all that stuff, and everybody seeing my face was something that 15 years ago, there is no way in hell you would have got me to do this. Right. But because I am able to overcome those fears and realize that I do look okay. I'm happy with what I see in the mirror. I love myself, which was a huge conqueror of fear, was the ability to start loving myself.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, look, I want to help people. This is my new purpose in life. I want to live a life of service. And the only way to do that is to put myself out on platforms like this so that people can get to know who I am and reach out to me for help.
Yep.
So am I afraid? Yes. But I no longer let it cripple me. I no longer let it stop me. What I do now is figure out how to overcome it and make it drive me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way to make it work for you. Because, fear doesn't have to be crippling. When you use fear the right way, with just looking at what is it telling me, what can I do with this, they can make better choices and then do it anyway. And the doing it anyway is the courage part, where courage is basically feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And yeah, it's a good thing. Fear is part of my motivation these days as well, in a different way than yours, but it helps me to create the things because, I want to help people. I want to make sure that they feel better, that everything's improving in their lives. And now it's more of a, when I don't do it, who will? So there's a bit, it's not a big fear, but it's a bit of a, yeah, people won't get the help when I don't do it because it's not there. So yeah, got to do it.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we all have a little bit different motivations. And now, for me, like perfect example, my most intimate relationship obviously is with my wife, and there are times when I don't feel adequate or good enough for her. And those things used to cripple me, right? And they used to drive me to drink and drug. But now what it does is it makes me search for ways to be a better husband.
Mm.
Because I've realized that if I feel a certain way and I feel that there's something wrong with me, there's something that I'm doing to make myself feel that way. So the way to change that is to figure out what it is I'm doing that's causing those fears and causing that negative attitude and take steps to change them.
Yeah.
So if I don't feel like the best husband in the world, what's the answer to that? Become a better freaking husband.
Yeah.
And that's with everything. That's with a business leader. That's with, a father. That's with a friend. If you feel like, let me change that. If you're afraid that you are not adequate in those areas, well, guess what? There's something that you need to change so that you do feel adequate in those areas.
Yeah. It's about your own headspace. What can you do in your own mind to change your behaviors, to change your thoughts, and also maybe not take them serious, because that's one of the big things I had to do, to not take my own thoughts as serious as I used to. Because when my inner voice, when my inner judge starts, there's nothing that benefits me within any way. So it's better this thing of, okay, take a seat, go sit there, talk to me. I'm not really going to listen because I just don't want to constantly hear that inner judge, because it's just getting me terrified. It's just making me stop things, and then I get stuck then, and I'd rather not. So getting the other side of it is beneficial, because I then think about things. How do I want to do it? What do I want to do? But the real judge that creates the real deep fear, there's no point in listening to it anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. And I do the same thing. It's one of my favorite quotes, and one of my mentors turned me on to it when I first started early recovery, and it was, he flat out told me, he said, I got good news and bad news. He's like, the bad news is you're the freaking problem. He's like, the good news is you're also the solution. And I had to really search and think about what he meant. And finally I started to, comprehend exactly what he was telling me. And our mind is the most capable thing that we have.
Yeah.
And it has the ability to destroy us, but it also has the ability to make us the strongest person on the planet. It's just a matter of how you use it. And if, like you said, if you let those fears and you let those crazy, we all have them. Everybody out there sometimes thinks that they're not enough, that, that they're not good enough to do this, not good enough to do that. But the difference is the people that are successful and the people that live happy lives have figured out a way to not let those thoughts control them on a daily basis. Yeah. And I think that's the key to overcoming fear, is to realize you're going to have those moments. We all have them. Yep. Elon Musk is afraid.
Guaranteed.
And I'm sure there's parts of his life that he wants to change on a daily basis. The difference is he doesn't let them destroy him to the point to where he's not constructive, to where he's not positive, and the examples can go on and on and on. They have figured out a way to live life in a positive manner despite the way they feel sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. It's this feel the fear and do it anyway type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think about like the astronauts, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do you think when they get in that space shuttle, they're not scared shitless? Yeah. But they, it's something that they have convinced themselves that they want to do more than anything else, and they're not going to let fear stop them.
That's it.
Evel Knievel, right? When he was jumping over the Grand Canyon and doing all those crazy things, do you think that man wasn't scared?
He must have
There has to be some serious fear involved in that, but he didn't let it consume him. Yeah. And I think that's a key word, that consumption. Fear used to be so consuming to me that it stopped me from doing what I really wanted to do.
Yes, same.
And once I was able to, I don't want to say completely overcome it, because I don't think that's possible. Once I was able to control it and not let it consume every thought of every day, then I started to make some positive headway.
Yeah, for me, it started with not taking my thoughts, so not taking myself so serious. Mm-hmm. The moment I started to think about, well, everybody has those kind of thoughts. Is everybody acting upon them? No. Okay. Should I then? Probably not. Are these constructive thoughts? No, they're not. So analyzing my own thought process, and then I'm going to say, I don't need to take myself that serious, because these thoughts will come up, but it's not really my voice. Because that's one thing that I at some point realized when I was watching a video where it was said that we are the accumulated opinions of others. And then I said, wait, those voices in my mind, they're not necessarily mine. Should I take them serious then? No, because, and yes, some of them, my mom, some of them other people. Because living with someone who's scared of living as a child is going to make you scared of living, because what else example do you have? So over time, learning that those voices don't mean that much, and I can do much more than I thought I could. That's been pretty cool to go through that process, to be fair.
Yeah, I think, you remind me of, I know you remember them cartoons where you have the little angel on one side and the little devil on the other side, right? And fear consumed me so much that I literally listened to the devil way too much. Yep. And it wasn't until I had some personal development and started letting other people into my life that I trusted. I think that's a key part. There were certain people that I started to trust and started to bounce ideas off of them and actually consider their advice, right? That I was like, not only don't listen to the devil so much, but don't listen to either one of them so much. Like you said, not take it so serious. Not everything is life and death.
Most things aren't.
Yeah. We make this thing where we turn, mountains into molehills and everything is the end of the world. And it's really not true. I had to realize that for one, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as in here, I'm okay,
Mm-hmm.
everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. I've
You
had
know?
moments where I sat at my desk terrified and have this thing, okay, stop thinking about the past, stop thinking about the future. Am I right now at this moment okay? And then I had to
Yeah.
sit with myself for a bit to just get present, because it is about being present. Looking at my keyboard, sometimes looking at my phone, whatever it was. And I just, yeah, right now there's no big deal. Nothing's really going on. So yes, I'm okay right now. Okay, the past is the past. I can't change it. So that's irrelevant. The future? Well, I'm not there yet, so that's irrelevant too. I can only work towards it. So right now is the only time I've got. Well, I'm okay right now. All right, let's just whatever I wanted to do, because right now I'm okay. And when I'm okay right now, life's good.
Yeah, I think, and it's the only moment that matters, right?
Yep.
Like that was huge for me. And I was a big long-term guy, save money for 10 years from now, always constantly stressed out and fearful about what was going to happen tomorrow
Yeah.
instead of living today.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, wake up and smell the roses kind of thing, right? I never did that. I was always worried that it was going to rain tomorrow instead of enjoying the sunshine today.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge breakthrough for me, was to, for one, realize that it doesn't matter how much I worry about it. It's not going to change a single damn thing.
Nope.
And for two, nothing ever turns out as bad as I imagine it's going to anyway.
Nope. It's always different. The thing is, you cannot prepare for the future because you're not there yet. Things will always be different than you think they will be. I've done a lot of overthinking for weeks on certain things that I needed to go to or needed to happen, and it never happened the way I thought. So at some point I had this thought, why am I even thinking about something that's guaranteed not going to happen the way I think it's going to happen? Might as well quit, because it's never going to happen the way I think it will, because I can make it way worse than it will ever be.
Yeah, I think we all can. And I think sometimes, like I said, we've been programmed that way, and it literally becomes human nature to expect the worst and think the worst, right? Because we just don't know of any other way of living life, and until we start figuring out a way to actually change the way we think inside, I think, the whole thing is everybody asks me now, especially people that have known me for years and years, is what did you do to change? And the actual answer is it's an inside job. Yeah, I work out now. Yeah, I eat a little better. Yeah, I do this and that. But literally, I had to change this. And the reality is that I was all screwed up inside.
Yeah.
And until I started figuring out ways to make baby step changes, because they don't happen overnight, but until I was able to start digging in and figuring out why I thought the way I thought, and action steps to start changing the way that I think, then, everything else just kind of fell in place. It was no big overnight thing, but, all of a sudden I became a better boss. All of a sudden I became a better husband. All of a sudden I became a better father, a better friend. And I didn't really focus on becoming those things. All I did was focus on not feeling like such a piece of crap in my own mind. And once I finally started doing that, then everything else it's crazy how simplistic life can be. It is the most complicated thing that we deal with on a daily basis, right?
Yep.
And I talk about that a lot on my reels and Instagram and stuff like that. It's how we're afraid to ask for help with the most complicated thing that we deal with. We have no problem asking for a personal trainer or a nutritionist or going to a doctor when we're sick, but the most complicated thing that we deal with on a daily basis is life, and we are so afraid to ask for help with it.
Yeah.
But once you finally do that and you finally realize that you can change the way you feel inside, the rest of life is very simple and it just comes together.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
All right, listen, I don't want to drag this out too far. We're about at 40 minutes. So before we get off of here, I did want to give you the opportunity to shout out some of your platforms. So if somebody would like to talk to you or get a hold of you. So if you want to do that real quick.
I'm on Facebook and on LinkedIn. That's where I'm the most active. I'm also on Instagram, and you can either look for my name or Connecting Life Coaching. You find them through both. And yeah, just message me if you want to have a conversation, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. And also, as always, all my links will be in the description of this podcast, and I will make sure that I get Diana's links and put them on there as well.
Thank you.
I did want to thank you very much for doing this. You're a very cherished friend, and I appreciate you just coming on and being honest. I think that's the biggest thing is honesty now is a huge part of my life where it wasn't always. But other than that, thanks everybody for listening in. I hope that you got a ton of value out of what you heard today. And as always, I love you all and God bless.
Once again, thank you for joining the Awareness to Obtain podcast, where we are building a community that is safe for men to discuss issues and find the help that they need. You can find all of my personal links in the description. Please do not hesitate to reach out with me. I want to help as many men as possible live the life that they truly want to live. And as always, thank you and God bless.